Now, is there anyone that's not up to date with autonomous vehicle technology? I can change the way minds work. I can change the way you get goods delivered to your house.
Tell us a little bit more about those early days.
Enormous four-wheel drive monster. And you're there and you're with your life's vision, but they've just come from a meeting where someone was pitching artificial sausage meat to them.
Why did you have to do it?
Don't start it if you're wondering if. The simplest thing can let you down.
Oh, wow.
Not my job, not my job.
How do you really compete with them?
You can do a lot with the kind of money that we've got.
Do you have an example like that?
I'm really looking forward tomorrow, Professor Newman, because this is my first piece of brain surgery. I'm not feeling awesome about that. You should definitely come and work in a company like ours and not a bank.
Hey guys, Alex here and welcome back to Founders Hack, a channel where we interview entrepreneurs who started exciting businesses. Today's episode is a recording of a fireside chat I hosted with Paul Newman, the co-founder and CTO of a startup called Oxbotica, which is now at the forefront of the autonomous vehicle technology. Paul spun out Oxbotica from University of Oxford in 2014 and has grown it to become a multinational company with over 220 employees. Oxbotica has raised more than $90 million in VC funding to date and secured high-profile partnerships with Ocado and BP. In addition to his roles at Oxbotica and University of Oxford, Paul also serves as a science advisor to the UK Prime Minister, so it was a real privilege to have him over for a talk. Enjoy the story, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
Hi, Paul, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here, Alex.
I wanted to start with a couple of questions, like simple questions about the Oxbotica business model, just to get everyone up to speed.
Sure.
So first of all, how do you explain what Oxbotica does to a person who is not up to speed with the latest autonomous vehicle technology?
Okay, I mean, is there anyone that's not up to date with autonomous vehicle technology? Is that a thing that's possible? Yeah, look, okay, well, cutting to the chase, we are a software business. And we're a B2B software business, not B2C. So we're absolutely not trying to build taxis or autonomous trucks. Instead, I mean, I guess the closest rough analogy you'd get would be like Windows. But the point is, Windows is an operating system across different types of hardware. And we do the same. So we build a software suite that's across any type of hardware to provide autonomy to other people. So we're B2B, and you can call Oxbotica and go, I would like to make the following vehicle autonomous in my industry. And can we use your software? And we go, yes, how do you want it wrapped? That's a very different business model from I will build a taxi company and export that worldwide. Or I will build big yellow mining trucks and they will be autonomous and I will try and sell you trucks. So we're a pure software play. We don't do any atoms, just the bits to move atoms.
Okay, very clear. So is the business model software as a service, so SaaS, or is it kind of bespoke consulting?
Oh, no. Consulting's a disastrous idea. No, because consulting is limited only by the number of hours in your day, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound so smart. No, it's a licensing model. So, and we have a sort of a simplex of how we can charge. We can do it per vehicle, we can do it per hour, we can do it per mile. We do. There's NRE on the top of it if you wish as well, if you want something bespoke. But no, fundamentally, it's a licensing model.
Perfect. And in terms of the stage where you are at right now, are you already generating revenue?
Yeah, we are generating some revenue. We're pre-profit, so we're still venture-backed. And everything that we make, we put straight back into the people. We just raised a nice round in the middle of the COVID year last year, just over 72 million, I think. And that's all going into people and doing. Yeah. So I think most autonomy companies are pre-profit, but not necessarily pre-revenue. That's where we're at. I think there's something else interesting that I wanted to bring out from our business model is that one way to think about it is a Russian doll. So you don't have to get everything. You can buy a smaller part of it and say, actually, I like the radar system because I'm in a mine and GPS doesn't work underground, so I'd like that component of it. Or I'm building autonomous vehicles in this domain, and I'd like a perception system. And so we can sell components as well. That's a really important point for sort of generating that flywheel as well, where you get stuff out there, you get the use case, you get the data from it, and you can generate thus.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about your competitive landscape? Because as you just mentioned that you are not trying to be like an autonomous taxi company, which the names that we know, like Uber, Waymo, etc. You're trying to be someone else. So, what is the competitive landscape in your case then?
Look, I mean, I think people often confuse us for trying to be a Waymo. I mean, that's just because the narrative was autonomous cars. And I think that, you know, our strategy is you don't have to boil the ocean. So we partner, and not all of our partners are public, but they will be soon. We partner with people who can build an entire ecosystem, who have spent billions on building the bits that they need to build, that we don't need to touch. So our focus is just build the software that makes vehicles know where they are, what's around them, what they should do. Not doing the sensors, verification and validation, that's done with partnerships as well, not doing the comms, not building the vehicles, not doing the systems integration into those vehicles necessarily in all cases. So in that case, we're somewhat unique in that you can't be somewhat unique, you either are unique or not, but I think we are unique in that sense in terms of that business model. There are, in every sector that we intersect, there are players in there, right? So you know, our span at the moment from sectors that we're deploying and contracting into goes from mining at one end to shuttles for public spaces down the other end. So that's perhaps 16-seaters through cities as autonomous vehicles on not dedicated routes, but not every route. So it's not like your car, you can drive everywhere any time of day. It's not, they're more limited routes. And that's the sort of span that we go in now. And in the middle, we've got deployment, we've got off-roading with BP, we've got delivery with Ocado and around warehouses. But in every one of those verticals that are horizontal intersects, there's someone in there who does autonomy or does something. Most of them, we can do a better job because what we learn on road, we're taking to mining. So we literally are running the perception systems that are running through cities in Europe in mines. And everything we learn on a road is the same software stack in a mine. So we don't overfit to a particular domain. And one of the things we have to do to be able to do that is be really low energy. So we've got a real crushing obsession with making the whole stack run very low energy. Because, you know, if you're going to have an electric vehicle, you can't be saying, oh, yes, but I need 3 kilowatts. It's got to run off a small battery unit, so we're sort of targeting 200 watts for the entire autonomy stack. That does mean that you can't go 70 miles an hour, be missing cars by a foot. Okay, so there are some operational domains that are out, but that's our sweet spot.
Okay, perfect. So we can say that you're probably like the only player who is horizontally playing in all these verticals.
Yeah, but we're stopping before robo-taxis. So there are other giants in robo-taxis, because otherwise I don't think it's credible, right?
Yeah.
So we think that the robo-taxi thing and doing a B2C, it's a big play, it will come, but there are things to do before that. So I've got a North Star, like it's in the direction of cars, but there are things to do before that make economic sense that you can do without the billions because of partnerships. And our partnerships are pretty spectacular.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll talk about partnerships a little bit later. But now I wanted to kind of go back to the history of Oxbotica and how it was born. I already mentioned that it was kind of born out of your research work at University of Oxford. Can you tell us a little bit more about those early days? Did you know from the very beginning that you would have a company based on your research work, or how did it happen?
Oh, look, it's really interesting. And that goes back to a story with my friend and co-founder, Ingmar Posner, and we were working together in the uni. So look, always had a big vision for robotic systems. So we're fundamentally, the Botica bit comes from robotics, right? So I'm a field roboticist. My history and my background in academia is solving big problems in robotics. In fact, most of the autonomy companies came from the robotics industry and academia. There's a reason for that, and that's because we're systems builders and we get stuff out there. and try to build systems. So my heritage going back to to Australia was port automation, mine automation back in 1996, where ports were being automated. In fact, one of the directors of Oxbotica was automating ports in 1996 with my supervisor Hugh Derrant-White. And I'd come back from MIT and started to build a robotics group here in Oxford. And I remember thinking, look, I didn't want to have a career with an archipelago of great papers. Like, I'm a builder, right? And I wanted to have a great big honking mainland. And I remember thinking, like, I need to bring this together. So what I want to do is I want to build big systems. And I think wholesale outdoor autonomy, where there's no GPS, you're totally self-sufficient, is a really cool thing to do. So I went down to the UK Science Council, EPSRC, and said, look, I think the driverless car thing, I'm part of that community. It's happening over in the States. I think autonomous vehicles should come to the UK. So I went to the Department for Transport and said, we should start doing something here because this stuff's coming. I'm going to build one here. So did a deal with Nissan inside the university, did a deal with BAE Systems, actually, got a thing called the Wildcat, which is this just enormous four-wheel drive monster, right? Being built by them, and did a deal with them, got the first vehicle, built a team around it, and went, this is quite extraordinary. We should do something. Got the first vehicle moving. I went, actually, first vehicle working around Whiteham Cricket Club where I play cricket. And we're like, okay. Then did it with Nissan, and I thought, actually, no, we should go real large here. And got a big grant, got a £5 million grant, and said, right, I'm going to put the whole group on building this whole system. And around about that time, Ingmar and I were like, you know what? We've got all the components here that we need. Like, we haven't got one idea. We've got 30. Right? We should do something with this. And so we started talking to the university about a new way to do a spin out where the licensing and equity terms and stuff would be suitable rather for a business, rather than it's got one idea, it's got lots. And although, that IP is kind of like quite old now, it's all been redone, but that was the original ideas there. And talk to the team of people and said, look, we think we're going to do this. Would you like to come with us? And we did. And it took us about 2 years, I guess, to talk to the university and work through the different models in which we would do it. And then we did it, and we launched. And we launched without investment. So we bootstrapped.
Okay.
And the first 4 years we traded. So we worked with different OEMs, we did different sort of demonstrators and built the company up. And then we took the first investment from IP Group and Parkwalk back in 2018. Yeah. And it was always that decision. It was always, let's build.
Why did you have to do it out of interest? So why couldn't you just continue working with grants and being part of?
That's great, right? Awesome. Academe, amazing. But I'd worked in industry before academia. I worked in a company called Sonify. One of the biggest kicks is when you get to see the stuff that you made being out there and someone else giving you a $5 for it. Right? That, I love academia. It's amazing. I adore it, still do. But there's something about scaling that happens in a business, right? So I'm now at the brink of being able to really change the way people and goods are moved. I can change the way minds work. I can change the way you get goods delivered to your house. And software is just perfect for that because it scales because it's got no mass. So 1 million copies costs no more than the first copy. Not true of anyone that's doing hardware, right? So that just sounds very, very hard. So it was a thirst from Ingmar and I that there was something bigger, that was an underspend. I think I surprised myself by the fire of entrepreneurialism that I discovered that was so easy to light. The next thing. I mean, it's like a black hole. However much you put into it, it will take more from you. But, we've got offices now in North America, hiring in Australia. I think we're going to be at 220, 230 people soon. So that's, it's a substantial endeavor. And I adore the way in which, at times, not always, but at times, it's like flying a really, really fast fighter. You just twitch the stick and the whole thing toggles. Yeah. And you're really connected to the flight surface of the thing. That's very scary because you could crash it easily, but it's also very responsive. And that's an exciting thing.
So speaking about hard times, and you mentioned that you were bootstrapping for the first couple of years. What was the biggest, let's say, obstacle or maybe existential threat?
God, I mean, I'm going to reject the premise of like there was one threat. I think that makes it sound like there was that one moment. It's everywhere, right? There's lots of perilous things you can do, and as you're growing, especially if you're bootstrapping, even if you've got investment, like you have to grow, so your cash burn goes up to do more, which means your time sensitivity goes up. So you become even more sensitive to things just aligning badly, and that's hairy. You're always looking at a runway. When are we going to be through that? Or you have a contract with someone and they go, yeah, we're definitely going to do it, but Bob's just left.
Oh no! Do you have an example like that?
Yeah, I've got lots, but I can't give you their names. So yeah, you'll be contracting with someone, and in the early days it might be 300-400K, and it's definitely coming in, and it does come in, but it's 3 months late. So that's a real thing, because you've got 15, 20, then 30, then 40 people. So that the ratio of income to outcome in that side. I mean, technically, it's always hard. You can have amazing tech at the heart of it, but then you can the simplest thing can let you down. There were some examples where early days on cameras, fine, we're fine in the rain, but then there's suddenly a hailstorm goes through, and there's a big sharp change in temperature, and the inside of your camera lenses fog up, but you've never seen before a 22-degree temperature change in high humidity. Demo doesn't work, right? But that's not your stuff. That's because the lens is slightly leaky, and that's not your thing. But however, doesn't work. So there was all those sort of the early demos were always quite stressful. We always came through. We didn't have that we've ever had. We had just one bad demo, I think, that we did. And actually, it's quite interesting. The person got confused between the demo failing and actually the safety checks, where the vehicle starts itself off and pretends to fail to see what happens. So, those things are always quite stressful. You never have the comfort of being funded by a giant, so, you're always quite close to the metal. You're being scrappy. Other existential things, well, wasn't very easy raising money in the middle of COVID, that's for sure. But we came through that, and you just stick to your guns. I don't have I'd love to say, what, Alex, it's this one thing. It's not. And
that's part of the reason, why I asked this question, because I guess as you get bigger, your problems get bigger. But as an entrepreneur, you just have to go ahead and.
I mean, I think it's really important that you figure out, what am I not good at, right? And find people around you who you say, could you come and just join my team and help, getting good COOs, getting good CEOs, getting good CFOs. The technical VP team, Ryan and Ben, are amazing. I think that's really important as well. That's one of the things I really counseled myself on when starting was, don't boil the ocean. You do, as a founder, get pulled into lots of things. There are lots of escalation points, because you kind of provide that singular, obdurate energy that this is what I think we should do. I believe in this. But I think that's a really important point of growing. And that's not easy either, because you kind of go, wouldn't do it like this. And you have to go, that's okay. That's not my job. Yeah.
It's basically staying focused.
Yeah, and you shouldn't kid yourself, right? Because that would be a lovely thing to say, I'm laser focused, but that would be bullshit, right? That would just be crap, because you do get pulled in lots of different ways, and there are lots of things you really care. You really care about the people. Oh my God, are they happy? Are we being productive? Is it doing what they want? Are the jobs what they want? And then as you grow, you find yourself being spread thinner and thinner and thinner, and that can be hard. That can be really hard. But I really believe you to get this Maslow's stuff. Make sure people are happy, or bust yourself to make sure they're happy. Can't always do it, and sometimes you make mistakes, but really care about that. I personally really care about that.
Great. Talking about raising capital, do you have any story, let's say a memorable story, probably from the early days?
Yeah, I do. I think when you're raising, right, one of the things that that you have to get your head into is, you have to meet a lot of people, and you're there and you're with your life's vision, and it's great. But they've just come from a meeting where someone was pitching artificial sausage meat to them. So they've just completely switched, right? So you're contextualizing your life, but these poor people have been bombarded with very effervescent, E-type characters going, this is the thing, this is the thing. So I've got a couple of stories. I've got some really funny ones. I remember someone going, well, this is just great, but does it work with orange lights? What do you mean orange? Oh, we've heard that orange lights are really important. And then I remember someone saying to me, all you just say is go to the questions like, go, yes, yeah, works really well with orange lights. So that's just great. Yeah, no, and I don't want to tell a story about just mad things. Someone once said to me, oh, this sounds absolutely amazing. And some of your ideas in it were really, really, really smart. But if it was this good, wouldn't Google and Apple already have done it? And I was like, I can't win that conversation, right? Because if I'd started by saying, we're doing the same thing that Google and Apple are doing, they wouldn't like it. But if we're doing it, so it's difficult, right? I mean, I think my advice would be understand what investors are trying to balance in their head. Like if it's an extraordinary story, can they find people that are like you? Can they find people that are different to you? What are they worrying about? I think that's important. I do think you just need to, when you're going through all those people that you're meeting, and it's hard work, you have to really believe your own story, right? And I say that to any founder. Like, don't start it if you're wondering if. Just go, I really think this thing, because you have to, there will be nights and evenings where you've been skinned, and what's left is that core, and you don't want to be checking that core's okay. That core needs to be able to stand all of it. Now, you do need to be able to pivot on execution. That's one thing I was talking about yesterday. But in terms of that, I really believe I can build a business that can do that with the team that I've got. And the naysayers, well, they're just missing that chance. I think you have to be somewhat pathologically positive.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great advice. Speaking about, again, a little bit of early days, how did you find your first customers?
We have never had to place an advert. They call us. We've been very privileged in that. Now, we're not a business that is going to have 1,000 customers, right? We're much more like to have a few dozen big customers that are routes to the market themselves, like miners have many mines, or shuttle operators or transport operators. They operate in many countries. So we work in a model of partnership. So it's not like, can you send me the zip file of the source code? It doesn't work like that. So, so in that sense, we build partnerships cautiously and slowly, because it's just still hard, right? I mean, the model is, if you think about the early days of IBM computers, they kind of came with an engineer who helped you run them, right? And now we've got them all on our desks. So like, it's not exactly right, but the autonomy software is it's still in its early decades. So, how do we find those customers? Well, we have a process inside of the business where we walk through and say, look, there are many things that people ask us to do, but we're quite strict in deciding what we don't do. That's sometimes the hardest thing to do. So does this fit with our technical roadmap? Yes. No? They're out? Yes, it does. Okay. Does it fit with our capacity right now? Yes. No. Okay. Does it fit with our fiscal models of what's required? Do they understand the long-term licensing model? Yes. No. Do they have suitable teams to dock with our teams inside the business? Yes, no. So you have to, and then they want at the end are like cultural. We'll be able to have meetings. We will be able to problem solve together, because you've got to really think about that as a small business, right? You can't afford to be wasting 50 engineers on something that's not going to go somewhere in the end. You have to make sure you think there's a real straightforward, if we get everything right, way to market here.
Perfect. So now it was recently announced and covered in the media, your partnerships with Ocado and BP. Yeah. So two different verticals, as you say. Are there already use cases that are in production in terms of autonomous vehicle technology in any of these verticals? And what can the technology already do today?
let's start with mining. Okay, so miners have been using autonomy for about 20 years. Okay, so there have been autonomous vehicles for a long time as of port. So industrial autonomy is established. Okay, now I think the autonomy systems that are working there are very simple, somewhat impoverished. So that's why we're licensing into mining there. And then, so if you think about what mining is, it's actually logistics. The value in mining is generated by moving atoms from one place to another place at the time you want it to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you pick the atoms up of iron and you move them at the wrong time, that's a disaster, right? If you're not underneath the shovel at the right time, that's a disaster. Okay. But the value is generated in taking atoms from one place to another place. That's the same as delivery. It's the same. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same set of problems. So you can think about delivery to your house as a kind of mine. Yeah, you still got to move things in the right order at the right time with as little human intervention as possible and do it safely and do it at scale. So in that sense, for us, it's all the same problem. And I think this is one of the unifying things with the way we phrase the technology and some of the techniques that we have. We really are running the same stuff, with Ocado as that we're running is a mine, as we'll be talking with our public transport systems partner, which I can't announce at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So basically, autonomous technology in mining, it already exists, and you have mining sites where certain vehicles are already autonomous, right? Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah, that's an established technology in mining. Mm-hmm. Like Caterpillar and Komatsu are not bad at that at all. So and there was a port in Port Botany in Australia and up in Brisbane that's been autonomous for 20 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, using radars. So it's another thing, and Akiva, Amazon warehouses, the shelves around there. So I think the mistake thinking about autonomy is when people go, oh, there's going to be a step change, right? And it's nuts to say it's going to be a car with no steering wheel and no windscreen with a sofa at the back. Okay, it's far more nuanced than that.
I wanted to ask you what you think about Elon Musk and their technology that they're building, because I think he mentioned a couple of times that having almost 1 million vehicles on the road collecting the data gives them a massive competitive advantage.
Yep.
How would you, let's say, counter that if you just do this software bit? Yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to counter it. I can just agree. So it does give an advantage, right? And of course, our business is everyone else uses our autonomy. So it's their vehicles, not ours. Yeah, so all the vehicles that we put our autonomy in, we're learning from. Mm-hmm. So same thing. Now, there's one thing to say you've got bajillions of miles that actually can be a headache, because how you mine that to find the interesting bit is really, really hard. So you could say it gets harder. So if I were to say, look, Alex, I want to have a really detailed conversation with you, and at the same time, I transmitted 10,000 conversations, it's quite hard to find the hard bit, the really useful bit in there at the same time. Mm-hmm. So your signal to noise ratio, it's not so smart just to say, just give me more cars. Right. So one of the things we're doing with Ocado, for example, is very, very targeted data acquisition through their fleet of vehicles. So we scale in that sense. Now, it's not 1 million vehicles, but it is doing the things that are interesting. So we're spending our time saying, okay, so do we have 1 million consumer vehicles driving around? No. Okay. Have we got access to lots of vehicles through our clients? Yes, we do. Can we be super clever about which bits we want to grab hold of? Yes. And here's the really clever bit. Why do I have to drive it myself to learn from it? So one of the things we're doing is we have some interesting IP to generate scenarios that we've never experienced before. Yeah, exactly. So that means we can scale exponentially by being smart. And that works really well. So I don't have to wait for a human to experience it or a vehicle to drive it. There are things we can do that says, actually, this kind of thing, I saw something like this once, all of that kind of family of stuff, make me 1 million examples. So we're thinking along those lines. Here are other things that make no sense. If someone says, we've done, and I'm not necessarily talking about Waymo and Tesla, but it's, we've done 400,000 miles last week. And like, well, which miles? Which miles in particular? And what did you learn from that? Like, I could definitely send a vehicle out going around a trivial route and get huge mileage. And I'm thinking, what an expense. What an expense, because no interesting things happen. So I think that's those metrics I think are starting to be eroded. But there are really interesting things to be done around validation and verification using modern AI techniques. So AIs to train AIs.
Yeah. One other questions that I wanted to ask is, basically, you already mentioned that you're not backed by any big player, and then here you have like big companies spending billions on R&D. How do you really compete with them? And does it even like force you to be even smarter in the ways that you just described?
Yeah, I mean, look. We're not trying to boil an ocean. We're not trying to do all of the sensors. We're not trying to do all of the compute. I'm not trying to build a fleet, right? And I'm not trying to solve the hardest problem, which is no windscreen, no steering wheel anywhere, right? I'm not trying to solve that problem. I'm on the vector of that, but that's not where I want to hit first. And I'm not trying to build B2C. So by partnering with tier ones, by partnering with big comms companies, by partnering with users who want to use autonomy to make money, we don't have to spend huge sums. Okay. So, and again, I think ecosystems aren't the sum of their parts; they're the product of their parts. Okay. So, I think that's a really, really important point. Yeah, and if you think about how many, the ratio of core engineers to other businesses, we're not orders of magnitude out. We just don't have all the extra stuff that goes with that as well, about trying to run a huge vehicle fleet in 30 different places. So there is a disparity in terms of the funding that's in the States, the funding that's here. But look, hey, I'm pathologically positive. The fittest athletes are the ones that come down from mountains where they've been training, where there hasn't been quite so much oxygen, right? And you have to believe that. And, you can do a lot with the kind of money that we've got. And if you're just doing the software, you can do a lot.
Very exciting. So now a question that kind of relates to business school students and graduates and alumni. We were just discussing it before the call, that I still feel that a lot of people go for a career in traditional banks rather than pursuing a career at industrial high technology companies like yours. First of all, where do you see business school grads fit in companies like yours?
Yeah.
Do they have a role to play? And what this role is? Okay,
so you should definitely come and work in a company like ours and not a bank. Like, axiomatically, like I can just say, I can argue that by assertion. Here's the thing, right? The way in which people and goods are moved is about to change. And get yourself on a plane and look down and look at everything we've built. Most of that has been built because we want to move stuff, right? So that's a huge, huge, huge business. Get with engineers. All of the problems that we're going to fix are fixed by engineers. Everything that you like in your life, your phone, your computer, your houses, your cars, your roads, they're built by people who build, right? Now, people who build need people who can help them strategize, execute tactics, and just think differently. You just need to have a diversity of thought patterns. Don't leave it just to the engineers. Now, many engineers that, for example, code can also do business and strategy. I put myself in that bracket. It doesn't mean that we're going to ask you to code, but you could learn. But that's not what the role has to be, right? So if you're going to run a business, you're going to have people who think about business, who have experience from businesses that are in the siblings, cousin businesses. So it would just be bonkers to think, that's a high-tech business, ergo we don't need people who are epic at business, because the word business is in there. Like, you're not talking going into academia. Of course we need you. So get in there.
Speaking about it, by the way, where can people see the job ads and job positions?
Go to info Oxbotica, and if you're interested, whether or not we've got roles up there, if you fancy changing the way that things are done, and you think that the way we move and drive and is about to change, and you want to get behind the next unicorn, then you should write. So the hardest thing, I mean, I can answer your question actually technically there. The hardest thing in autonomy is prediction. So it's predicting what's going to happen, where you are, what's around you. Pretty doable. Predicting what's going to happen 10, 15 seconds into the future in complicated environments like Oxford Street. I mean, I don't think you could do it. If I gave you a photo of Oxford Street, or even like 2 seconds, and then said, right, and I need you to predict what everyone's going to do 15 seconds in the future, you wouldn't be able to do it. So what you do is you're driving along Oxford Street, you just drive slower. So Ocado's just pretty interesting in that, to say the least, they're a robotics company as well. So they are experts in automation. And there's an obvious pairing between automation in their customer fulfillment centers and the last mile delivery, and automation around their warehouses and out in their yards and their loading. So we provide a platform that's flexible for lots of different vehicles, and they've got lots of different vehicles. So for that, you need to get it in there, working in partnership, and join it up to their technology. Okay, so there's no point sitting on the side waiting. You have to get in there and figure out, how do you join this stuff, make those welds, work on that. And of course, they've got customers, they're a route to market, they're a technology company, they understand us. So that makes a ton of sense. So Ocado in that sense are different to, for example, Addison Lee, where they wanted to have, they were going to be a user, and we worked on what would this be like, what would limited areas look like. So they're very different. They're very different things. They weren't a technology company, and BP is a technology company, and they've got use cases in refineries and wind farms and solar plants, and then thinking more expansively beyond that as well. So they're a user of it as well, but they're also technologically motivated, and miners too. I mean, they're fairly technical people. I mean, they're the automation systems that they run are pretty sophisticated. And then in the end, in 2 to 3 years, we've got a contract to supply now for mass market shuttles. In the end, that will not be run by technically amazing companies. That will be run by transport companies. But that's like next. So you start by working with companies and end users that have teams in it that can work with you in terms of partnership. And then as you reach scale, you're working with simpler customers who say, well, I just need to be able to move my cargo, or I need to be able to get this delivered a kilometer away from me. One of the things I would look at is, how long have you been deploying for? So, have you built, look under the hood, what are you building there to scale? Like, is it, you've done some fancy videos, or have you deployed there? Are you honest about what's hard? I think that energy usage is extremely important. So if you open the boot and you can see a computer, there's something wrong, because it needs to be in the way. It needs to be small enough. So if you open the boot and you say, yeah, I've got 5 GPUs in here, well, then there's something really quite wrong with that, right? Yeah, you're thinking that's a research project. But if you're saying, actually, we've got a bunch of pro engineers that have, this is all sequestered away, and we're dropping the energy by 100 watts every 6 weeks, and we're trying to run on automotive hardware. If you're thinking, actually, we've really thought deeply about where we need to be on safety. Like, it's not just that, because you're not going to get in it. I've really thought deeply about insurance. I've really thought deeply about independence of both sensing and computation. So you don't just have a black box where you go, I think this will do great, and I'll do machine learning and it will drive. It's never going to pass safety. What does that really mean? If you really engaged with people who have sold vehicles in the millions to understand what type approval really looks like when someone has to sign and say it's safe. Have you understood that? Like, those are real business things you really need to get to. It's not a research program. It's really, can we get out of that? And then thinking, okay, so given I know those things, what's my business strategy to make money while we get there? Not sitting on the side hoping someone's going to buy us. Like, how are you actually going to do this? And how are you going to be really smart about the use of your data? How are you going to do that at scale so data doesn't become a liability, but actually becomes something that you want? So, again, I mean, I sort of shun away from questions and say, please tell me the thing, because actually it's blimmin' complicated. And I think the best investors that I met were the ones that would go, okay, so we understand there's like 20 things. Talk to us about those 20 things. And the worst is like, I would like a number. Okay, well, like that's like saying, which house is best? What do we what? I haven't got a number. 7. Well, why 7? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's nuanced. It's, we've passed the hype cycle now, which means we've passed max fakery. So peak hype cycle, max fakery. Now it's getting real. Get into the engineering, understand those teams. Are they being honest? Are they being realistic? What's their talent pool? How are they solving problems? Just simple things like we've got really interesting metrics like how, road to code and code to road and road to code is one of the metrics. So how long does it take from someone typing something to go through all of the safety checks, through all of the continuous integration checks, through the safety teams onto the road to find there's something we need to fix for it to come back onto the same developer's desk? What are those iteration cycles? That's a really important thing. And it's tragic actually how slow it is in some big companies, right? So how do you balance that? So there's lots of interesting metrics. Well, look, how do you not give you a glib answer? Everything that's got wheels, I think, won't be driven by humans. In the end, I think that's a problem that's going to get solved. I really do. It's like, how many of you can use a quill now? How many of you can ride a horse? Okay, it's going to be the same thing. The question is how quickly do horses go out of fashion? But I absolutely am convinced that we're not condemned to a future of humans having to sit behind steering wheels with their foot on an accelerator. That's just insane. Yeah.
So it's basically anything that moves, even like if we talk about like water and like boats and things like that, or flying.
Boats are definitely going to be autonomous. I mean, like I'm in the middle of the Atlantic, 2 days later, still the middle of the Atlantic. So absolutely. And look at how much of boat is taken care of because you've got to keep humans alive.
Yeah.
Take a tanker and go, okay, what could I, if there weren't humans living on that, what could I get rid of? Ooh, much of the boat. Yeah. So that absolutely shipping is going. Aircraft, where they kind of fly themselves already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and those first two, boats and aircraft, it's really hard to hit stuff. Like the opposite is true. With because there's not much stuff there. The opposite is true with land vehicles because it's more complicated. So yeah.
Okay, very, very interesting. And I also like one of your thoughts that you mentioned in one of your other talks that about sharing data and accumulating experience.
Yep.
I think if you can just talk a little bit more about that, because I find it fascinating.
It's one that's often missed, right? So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so look, when I get in a vehicle or something gets delivered to me in a vehicle in N years in the future, where N is a number we can talk about, or we can go, it's a number greater than 0. Okay, that thing's going to be delivered, or I'm going to be riding in a vehicle, or someone's going to be riding a vehicle that has the benefit of every mile driven by every vehicle ever. That's absolutely not true of your mate when you get in a car with them at the moment, because your mate at the moment just got the benefit of her life, which could be 2 years, okay, of driving. So we keep starting from 0. Now, I don't think this is a thing that is owned only by autonomous vehicles. I mean, if you had a choice of a medic and you need some surgery, and there's someone that comes in and they look like they're 22, or there's someone that comes in and they're 47, but maybe a bit more tired, you're probably going to choose the 47-year-old, I think, for a bit of brain surgery, right? You're probably going to choose the one that's got more experience. And this is no. It's this. I'm really looking forward tomorrow, Professor Newman, because this is my first piece of brain surgery. Like, you're not feeling awesome about that, right? But we keep starting from scratch with driving. But the most extraordinary thing about software being a driver is and with the way that we're having vehicles communicate and how we do machine learning and just rolling out upgrades, not even just on machine learning, we're just rolling out upgrades. A fender bender in Copenhagen can cause someone's life to be saved in Cape Town that afternoon, which is just extraordinary, right? So
this is fascinating. Exactly.
I think we are compelled. If that is the knockout reason why we should build these things. because at the moment we're just totally rate limited in the way that we drive by the rate of your life. That's all you do. Like, if any of you have had an accident or know someone that had an accident, that didn't make you a safer driver. Well, shame on us. So every accident that we have, for everything that happens, all the vehicles could get better. And that is just extraordinary, right? And that's the same. I think we'll have the same in medicine. I think we'll have the same across the board because of software, and that's going to be a true exponential. So, I mean, it took me a while to learn this, so I can speak about this. So the thing that we now have learned is that you have to get C-level buy-in for a big company to work with a small company, right? So I think that savvy startups will get that quite quick, because if it's a middle-level manager, they kind of feel that's quite risky, right? And they should just go with something safer. Right, so that's always a problem. So we could end up getting stuck for a long time. So please do try and get C-level sponsorship who can carry that through, and eventually you can say, because I think it's a good idea, we're going to take this risk and we're going to work with these guys. That's really, really important. Understand, please, very intently that the value of an hour negotiating to a big company where there's got someone whose job is to negotiate is nothing like the cost to a startup. Okay, so please don't send 20 legal people to a meeting with one of us because they're like, oh, this is quite hard. Okay, get to that in the end, but just think about the ratios. So also, the thing that a startup wants is for a big business not to take 3 weeks on every decision. It would much rather know no quickly and move on than telling a story that this might happen, and it has to go through tears and tears. Just crack on with it. That would be really, really helpful. Understand that small amounts of revenue are extremely important. It's not necessarily the sum that matters so much, but something, okay? Because you can say, yes, we've started. That's important as well, and it's a commitment. So, and I would definitely say, again, come back to make sure you have a human sponsor of it inside the big business. So there's someone that can build a human relationship on the other side. I think that's. I've got a load of things I could say like that are a little bit more detailed about actually how you do the business and IP risk and all of those things. I mean, IP is another thing that we've floundered several times on big companies. Like, if you are going to work with a company, a small startup that is disruptive to you, potentially, they are going to want to look after their IP, which the opposite is true of some big giants. We've had some extraordinary experience with some giants that basically said, we want to work with you so we can stop you working with anyone else. Right? So we do want to disrupt. That's our business. So don't be surprised if we act in a way that's disruptive, because it's actually what you want. Right. And, we could be with you and disrupting with you, but we are going to have that kind of attitude because we have to, because we've got investors who go, well, you're not signing that away, are you? Quite reasonably. But here's the other really big point. A startup wants to do the deal with you. Don't necessarily want to get going, but we're just not the same size. We're going to just see different risks.
Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It was super insightful.
Great.
And very inspiring.
Don't go to banks.
Don't go to banks. Want to change the world, you know where to write.
Just go build something. Go make something, right?